Let's talk about this wild stat featuring Patrick Mahomes if he beats the Vikings on Sunday, keys to victory on how the Chiefs can do just that, as well as Tyreek Hill saying the refs helped bail the Chiefs out of the Jets game just like they did in the Super Bowl. But first, how about those? All right, now first up, Sunday's game against the Vikings should be a good battle, and though Patrick Mahomes isn't concerned about this particular stat, if the Chiefs end up beating the Vikings this week, Patrick Mahomes will officially have beaten every team in the NFL, aside from the Chiefs, of course, because he's a Chief. So that's a pretty cool stat. On the flip side, Cousins has never beaten the Chiefs before. He's currently 0-3 against them in his career, all against Andy Reid coached teams, I might add. So I'm sure he's just as hungry for this W as well. Patrick was actually asked about this very thing, about beating the Vikings will mean he has beaten every team in the NFL aside from Kansas City in his presser this week, and he basically said he doesn't care about that as his focus is to win games every single week no matter who they play. And I will say, for Mahomes to do that, he's got to play a better game than he did against the Jets, and I do think that is definitely possible for multiple reasons, which I will get into here in just a moment, as well as some interesting things Tyreek said about the Chiefs being saved once again by the refs in this game against the Jets. But first, I gotta thank the sponsor of today's video, Chiefs Bids, who I'm proud to be partnering up with for another exclusive giveaway. We've already given away a signed Trent McDuffie helmet and a signed George Karlaftis jersey, but this time the giveaway is for a full-size Super Bowl 57 helmet signed by Patrick Mahomes himself. More on the giveaway in a moment, but first, Chiefs Bids is accessible through the official Chiefs app. Just click more than bids and you'll get to see all kinds of signed Chiefs memorabilia that's being auctioned off, featuring former and current players, as well as game-worn items that you can bid on. This is where I got my signed Kelsey jersey through one of their golden ticket mystery boxes, along with many other incredible signed pieces that you can see here. So make sure, if you haven't already, to check out the app that gets updated regularly for all kinds of awesome signed memorabilia to bid on. And that's actually where you're gonna wanna go anyway for your chance to win this signed Patrick Mahomes helmet. If you don't already have it, you just need to download the official Chiefs app, and from their homepage, go to more, click bids, then at the top right, hit the filter option and select giveaways, and the helmet will immediately pop up for you. And if you don't wanna use the app, even though that's the easiest and most preferred way, you can also click the link at the top of my description, which is chiefs.com/chiefsbids, and then click filter, offer type, choose raffle, hit apply, and you can find it that way as well. Now, you will need to make sure your account info is filled out with your name, email, card info, and a mailing address, because the winner will be auto-selected and notified via the email address associated to the account if you win this Sunday evening, sometime after the Chiefs and Vikings game is over. And the reason you need your card info in there is because the winner will have to pay for shipping, but that's an absolute steal for a signed Patrick Mahomes helmet, something that I personally don't even have yet. So make sure you go to the app or the link in my description for your chance to enter to win this signed helmet by the best quarterback in the game. All right, we know how the Chiefs and Jets game ended on Sunday Night Football, with the Chiefs getting a W and thousands of grown men crying real actual tears about it. Anyway, former Chiefs wide receiver Tyreek Hill recently weighed in about this penalty that was called at the end of the Chiefs and Jets game. And for a little bit of context here that brought them to this point, Mahomes could be heard talking in an interview, I think on 610 Sports, sharing why he thought it was indeed a penalty. He said, at the end of the day, if you have your arms around a receiver's neck, it's going to get called, which is why he threw the ball MVS's way. He said he knew it was going to get flagged. And of course, then this clip surfaced online, and Gardner himself took to his Twitter/X account to give his thoughts on why it wasn't a penalty, which you can pause and read his whole explanation here if you'd like. But the funniest part of this to me is he literally shared the slow motion clip that clearly shows him altering MVS's route and committing a penalty. I mean, it's almost like if a guy stole something at a gas station, got caught, and then went to court with the security footage in slow-mo of him putting the food he stole into his actual pocket. So I personally enjoyed that quite a bit. On top of that, in a now deleted tweet, Sauce said that maybe he wouldn't have been flagged if he was a Swiftie. Like, dog, your sodium levels got to be so astronomically high, because that's a ton of salt you're having to deal with. Poor guy. But things weren't done there, because Tyreek Hill, the bitter ex-girlfriend who willingly left the relationship yet can't stop talking about said former relationship that he left, declared on his podcast that the Chiefs got saved by the refs.
It was a 50-50. When the game on the line, you got to let the players play. It's a good game. The Chiefs, they got saved like that last year, for real though, and the Eagles in the Super Bowl. If we been for real. Then they come back and get saved in the Jets game. Maybe because Taylor Swift was in the building. I don't know what's going on, but.
Okay, bud. I mean, I understand Tyreek watched the Chiefs win the Super Bowl without him, which is probably why he's saying things from that perspective and still going on about it. If he was still on the team, though, he would be leaning more in the direction of Travis Kelce and his explanation, who recently said this on his podcast.
You can't give the ref that. You know what I mean? Like, you can't put it in his hands to be able to call that. You know what I mean?
And while it wasn't the most egregious penalty, it was a bit of a soft call, just like the call on the play prior for holding on Trey Smith was. And had Trey Smith not been flagged, that would have resulted in a first down as Mahomes connected with Kelce on third and whatever it was. And that would have put the Chiefs at the Jets' 8-yard line, basically ending the game. But regardless, that was called, and then Sauce's penalty was called right after. And you can't really give the refs a reason to throw a flag in those crucial situations, no matter if you're a Chief or a Jet or a whiny crybaby. And here's the final thing I'll show about this as tears still stream down the faces of the mentally malnourished, because we got to move on from this loser ref blaming mindset and get on with the rest of the video.
I did see Dean Blandino, a very well-regarded former official and knowledgeable on officiating. He said that it was clearly a hold. I'm not going to lie.
What does he know?
Next up, here's some reasons why I think Patrick Mahomes can have a better game this Sunday against the Vikings, and then I'll dive into why I think the Chiefs ultimately end up with the W. First of all, let me say this about last week. The Jets defense is the real deal. Take Josh Allen, for example. As he faced off against them week 1, he threw for 236 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions, suffering the lowest passer rating of the season for him. And since that game, Allen has thrown 8 touchdowns and only 1 interception. And then if you look at Patrick's weekly stats, prior to the game against the Jets, he had 7 touchdowns and 2 INTs, one of those interceptions being the Kadarius Toney pick 6 against the Lions. And then against the Jets, Mahomes had his highest interception game along with his lowest passer rating of the season. So credit where credit is due. The Jets defense is that good, though everyone knows Mahomes didn't play his best ball. I mean, he said as much himself during his presser earlier this week. But the Vikings defense, it's a wee bit different. Almost the opposite, to be honest. They've allowed a 111.1 rating to opposing QBs, a 99.1 rate to opposing tight ends. Yes, please, and thank you for Travis Kelce and Noah Gray, which is 30th in the NFL. They're 31st in completion percentage allowed, 27th in yards after catch allowed, 28th in total QB pressures, and 31st in interceptions forced. Therefore, this should be the game for the Chiefs offense, fingers crossed, to get back to humming in the passing game. Matt Nagy was asked about the wide receiver room in his presser yesterday, and he said the beauty of the offense is they have a lot of different guys that are learning how to play within the offense and learning who they are. The goal is to continue mentoring their growth so that when they get towards the end of the season, they're rolling. And regarding Justyn Ross, who played like 4 snaps last week and has only seen 2 targets, catching 1 for 6 yards, Nagy said he just needs to keep doing what he's doing, learning the different wide receiver roles of the offense, and to make the most of each and every opportunity given. The coaches want to keep developing him, as he is indeed a guy with some great talent. And a lot of Chiefs Kingdom keeps asking for Ross, saying they want to see more snaps from him, especially if guys like Sky Moore, for example, have over 100 routes ran this season and has only caught 7 passes in 2 games. Week 1 and week 4 resulted in literal nothing burgers on the stat sheet for him. So the question is, will Justyn Ross actually start to see the field more? Well, I haven't seen many signs pointing towards a yes, but at this point, what could it really hurt to give him some more snaps? And that's where I want to get your thoughts on the situation. Are you in the yes, please play Ross some more camp because what can it really hurt? Or do you lean more towards just trust the process to see if Sky and others will step up sooner rather than later? Let me know your thoughts either way on that in the comments down below. Anyway, as far as the Vikings defensive playstyle goes, they love to play man coverage a lot and blitz even more. They've blitzed more than any other team in the league at a 57% rate, but have generated the 5th fewest pressures. So not good. The question is, though, how much will they actually blitz Patrick Mahomes? Because against the blitz, Mahomes is a literal surgeon at dissecting defenses with extreme precision, and he has one of the highest ever passer ratings, 111.7 when blitzed. Therefore, I would predict the Vikings blitz a bit less, and the return of outside linebacker Marcus Davenport, who's been limited all week with an ankle injury he sustained in training camp, but did return and play against the Panthers, should help a bit with them easing off the blitz as well. They also have Danielle Hunter, passer. He's a dog who has racked up the 5th most sacks in the NFL so far this season with 5 total. And for what it's worth, the Vikings did sack Bryce Young 5 times last week, even forcing a fumble that they scooped up and took to the house for 6. Mahomes is a different beast, though, at not taking sacks, like a magician. He literally has the lowest pressure to sack ratio in the NFL and has been sacked the fewest times of any starter this season. The second is Baker Mayfield, believe it or not. So I'm not extremely worried there as long as Jawan Taylor quits drawing flags every 5 seconds. But the bright side of the Vikings defense is that their run defense has allowed running backs to only have about 3.7 yards per carry, which is tied for 7th best. And that will definitely make it more difficult for KC to get their run game established, which is something they struggle with often. But Isaiah Pacheco is coming off his best career game last week and is looking to keep that momentum going. On the other side of the ball, that's where things get a bit more interesting in my opinion, because Kirk Cousins is currently 3rd in passing yards and tied for 1st in passing touchdowns, but is coming off his worst game of the year. Look at this. He threw for just 139 yards, 2 touchdowns, both to Justin Jefferson, I might add, but also threw 2 picks, including a very ugly 99-yard pick 6. And since 2022, Kirk Cousins and Josh Allen are tied for the most interceptions thrown by a quarterback with 18 total. And this season alone, Kirk has thrown 4 picks. He's been sacked 10 times and has fumbled the ball 4 times, losing 3 of the 4. The Vikings also have the 2nd worst turnover differential in the league at -8, which is far from ideal. So I would be looking for the Chiefs defense to hopefully snag a couple of turnovers, which defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo said is never a guarantee. He did say, though, he's been a fan of Kirk Cousins since the beginning, remembering him even from his college days at Michigan State, someone who is very accurate with the football. And if you take away the turnovers, they are an offense that's going to be hard to stop. He said it seems like they face an exceptional wideout almost every single week, and Justin Jefferson, of course, is no exception. He's the real deal, a true competitor who's proven he's an elite wide receiver in this league, i.e., a guy the defense needs to be very concerned about. JJ currently leads the NFL with 543 receiving yards, has the 3rd most targets, only behind Devontae Adams and then Puka Nacua, and has the most 20-plus yard receptions with 14. Safety Mike Edwards said their goal is to take away those explosive plays from JJ and their yards after the catch. He said JJ's hard to bring down, so they got to stay alert and get to the ball quickly as a unit. Jordan Addison, the rookie receiver who's caught 9 passes for 124 yards and a touchdown over the last 2 games alone, is really explosive and fast, and they got to limit their explosive plays. So, of course, the Chiefs got to do what they can to stop JJ as well as rookie wide receiver Jordan Addison, but Spags noted that the wrinkle for them is how good the tight end TJ Hawkinson is. He currently leads all tight ends with 25 catches and so far has racked up 200 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Therefore, Spags said they got to know where Hawkinson is at all times. They have struggled against tight ends this season, to be honest, allowing a 110 rating when targeted, so they definitely got to keep tabs on that man. Something else they'll need to try and limit is the Vikings run game. Though the Vikings are 28th in the league in average rushing yards per game, last week they rushed for 135 yards and recently traded for veteran running back Cam Akers. The Chiefs defense, meanwhile, has struggled here a bit, being ranked 22nd in rushing yards per attempt allowed, and with Nick Bolton more than likely not playing again in this game, he's questionable per the words of Andy Reid in his presser today, they are going to have to step up once again in his absence, which I do have faith in Drew Tranquill, but Nick Bolton is one of the best linebackers in the league. Spags personally didn't seem confident Bolton will play in Sunday's game, but he noted he's chomping at the bit to get back out there. Quote, if he can go, he'll go, but we'll see where we are at the end. Either way, the Chiefs defense is still playing fantastic, giving up the 5th least points of any team in the league and are tied for 9th in touchdowns allowed in the red zone. On top of that, Kirk Cousins has been sacked at least twice in each game, and I'm going to be keeping my eyes on Chris Jones, who leads the team in sacks despite missing week 1, and George Karlaftis, who has the 8th most quarterback pressures of any defensive end in the league, and hopefully they can get to Cousins several times this weekend when it truly matters. Someone else who has come up extremely clutch when it matters is kicker Harrison Butker. He's 8 for 8 on field goals this season and hasn't missed an extra point. It definitely seems like his struggles from last year are behind him now that his ankle is all healed up. And on the subject of special teams coordinator and assistant head coach Dave Tobe said that he's very happy so far with wide receiver Montrell Washington as the team's returner. He noted that it's early and has obviously only been a couple of games, but overall, Montrell has been solid. He catches the ball well, makes good decisions, did a nice job for Denver last year as their returner, which caught their eye, and they were lucky to be able to add him to the practice squad, which was obviously helpful for when Richie James got placed on IR. He also noted that the Vikings Vikings punt returner Brandon Powell is a risk taker and will try to return most of the punts in an attempt to make a play rather than simply calling for a fair catch. And I will say special teams for the Chiefs has been a bright spot this season as they are ranked 4th best in DVOA, with Butker hitting 100% and Townsend absolutely booming any punts that he actually has to make. All in all, this is going to be a very interesting matchup between the Chiefs and Vikings, and I'm intrigued to see how it all plays out. The Vikings are a better team for sure than their 1-3 record shows, as they've lost all 3 of their games by only an average of 4.3 points. But of course, I'm rolling with the Chiefs to get the freaking W. I think Mahomes and company will find their rhythm this week. Kelsey will show out, and other receivers like Rashee Rice and hopefully more will step up. Meanwhile, the defense will get pressure on Cousins at key times, hopefully forcing a turnover or 2, and also should do just enough to limit their extremely talented offensive weapons. So that's why I'm going with the Chiefs getting the victory on the road, winning by a score of 24-21, but please, God, don't let it be that close. And with all that being said, you guys got to let me know your score predictions in the comments down below. And before I get out of here, let's take a quick look at the Chiefs and Vikings final injury report. And for the Vikings, you have 4 players listed as questionable. Linebacker Brian Asamoah, I said it wrong, but he's dealing with a toe injury, limited all week. Probably will play, we'll see though. Then you have safety Lewis Seen with the hamstring being limited all week as well, listed as questionable. Linebacker Marcus Davenport, limited all week except for Friday. So today he was fully participating in practice and he will more than likely play, as I said earlier in this video. Then you have quarterback Nick Mullins, look out. Then for the Chiefs, you have 3 players listed as questionable. Defensive tackle Matt Dickerson, if he doesn't play, I think that's gonna be all right. Then you have linebacker Nick Bolton. Again, he is a very important part of the Chiefs defense, but he hasn't played in the last 2 games and they've been able to get it done without him. Then for the last player, you have offensive tackle Wanye Morris with a hip injury of sorts. He was limited at least on Thursday, fully participated today, but listed as questionable. And this is worth watching because with the swing tackle, Prince Tega Wanogho, out on IR right now, Wanye Morris was probably potentially going to be one of the next man up if it's not Lucas Niang. But it's worth watching, worth noting, and there you go. You have 4 questionable for the Vikings, 3 questionable for the Chiefs, and I cannot wait for this freaking game. So until next time, when I call the game on Sunday, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?